welcome to viewers and coins of the vault alike. I am Tatsumari, and today I have absolutely no idea what I am doing for this stream. Um, I was feeling quite bored, and I was actually going to do a stream last night on a game that I found that is very similar to DDR or maybe even like Friday Night Funkin' or something like that, but my fingers were not cooperating, so it would have been very painful for you to watch. So, with that said, instead, I decided I'm going to do it today. And what we have, what at least what I kind of figured would be interesting, is I just finished recently the new chapter 16 for Maplestory the novel Sacred Tears. And I want to make sure I get this emphasized a lot. I wrote this with the assistance of the absolute VA. She is the voice of Orchid, Hilda, and the upcoming Reen. And she has Absolute has been looking forward to the introduction of the character Reen since the beginning of this project. She has called it her baby, and like the most. She's called it a few other things. She's called Reen a few other things, but Reen is her character that she has been looking forward to for a long time to be introduced into the story. So now with this story, it is her official introduction into the story. I mean, I do have an introduction to for her already in the story written, but this chapter will set up a couple one other character, Will, on how he came into the story, which I believe his introduction was done in the previous chapter of chapter 14, or not previous chapter, but chapter 14. So this will kind of expand on that, how Will came to know Dane, how he came to know Reen, and all of that stuff. Uh-oh. All right, cool. Um, After that, I'll be doing like a reading through it, a read through of it once, and then I'll be uploading it to fanfiction.net, where you can read it for yourself if you so desire. Well, I mean, I'll show reading through it here, but then I'll upload it to fanfiction.net, and then you can read it there for whenever you want in the full context of the story. By the way, there is a link to that story in the description below. Afterwards, we'll see if we can do some editing on chapter 18 of Guardians, which is the next book. And then from there, we'll see what happens. I honestly don't know. I do not have a plan on beyond doing the reading and doing some editing, so we shall see. So, thank you for coming, and I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you see here today. Oh, and yes, because I am still slightly sleepy, my voice is a little deeper. So if you would like to listen to it a little bit more sultry, put in the chat below if you would like me to use my normal streaming mic where the tones will come through a bit more clearly. Would you like that? Or would you rather me just use this microphone and continue on? Alright, so let's see if we can. Aha! Yes. Doing the thing. We need to look at this one. There we go. Being that I have this at full screen, I don't need to do some weird stuff to make it fit. So, anyways, before we get started, I think I'll put that up there really quick. Now, do keep in mind that this voice isn't going to last an extremely long time. But for as long as it's around, I would be more than willing to use it. All right. Ooh, I see. We have ourselves a vote. All right. So then, give me a minute and I will see what I can do. Test, test. Testing the microphone. So, being I do not, I'm not able to hear on my side. So, and based on the levels that I see, it is coming through. So, is that indeed the case for you guys? Is my nice voice coming through this microphone? Let me know in the chat. Alright. So, I believe everything is well and good. I will do one last check on my side, and then we shall get started with the reading. Oh, I wouldn't need to worry about my throat getting too torn up, random panda. This, for some reason, when I wake up, my voice sometimes does this, so it's not completely out of the ordinary. But welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you see here today. And now, with that said, let us get into the chapter. I shall make it bigger for you guys to see. And if you are having a bit of trouble seeing it, be sure and tap the gear on the side of the window there and turn up the resolution. It should make it better, so that the words won't be so blurry. But here for you
Now is the first reading ever of Maplestory the novel, Chapter 16, Arrival. Over the last 3 years since his declaration, Dane worked non-stop to find his solution to eliminating the darkness. Using multiple formulas and dozens of small pieces of darkness, he began to close in on a more concrete way to use the darkness for the ultimate light, and not become lost in its thrall. For the first 3 months, Dane faithfully visited Ariel's home, surprised by the speed of Ariel's pregnancy, but threw himself... Oh, I should mention that if you have not at least watched Chapter 15, Part 1, there will be some spoilers here, and you may be a little bit lost as to what's going on, especially since the full Chapter 15 has not yet come out. But you should be okay. For the first 3 months, Dane faithfully visited Ariel's home, surprised by the speed of Ariel's pregnancy, but threw himself into his work at the realization that their plan was coming to fruition. Unfortunately, his attention to his work eroded his visiting Ariel, turning the weeks into months as he pored over his research. Cleansing shades of darkness and memorizing the feel of it being pushed away in the local area. The only unfortunate thing I find with this voice is sometimes I get a buildup of nasty stuff in the back. So, beyond that, it's not too bad. As Nana Huatzin told him so long ago, the aurora crystals amplified the light of his and Ariel's love, but it wasn't enough alone. Absorbing the darkness in small bits and then channeling it as he had in the past did seem to have the desired effect. But at the same time, he could feel the darkness trying to overpower him more with each experiment. With the help of Tasya and Viren, Dane created gems made of concentrated ultimate light. Holding these gems while absorbing the darkness eliminated its effects on him, only to deplete and corrupt the gems after a single use. It has no form, yet it fills the world. It has no substance, yet it taints even the purest of hearts. It has no will, yet all who see it succumb to it. No greater truth exists. Dane groaned, leaning against his hand at his desk, clutching his skull and jaw. Below his sight, he opened his palm, revealing scars where the darkness carved his skin like canyons with each experiment. There has to be a way to channel this darkness without succumbing to its corruption. If the child would use the darkness to eliminate it, there needed to be a way to avoid corruption. The amounts he or she would be using were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times more than Dane was using now. Even an army of Aurora clerics, dedicating their light to ensure corruption of the child wouldn't happen, wasn't enough. As Dane felt the world close around him, ease washed over him as if a weight had lifted from his shoulders. Coming out of the laboratory, he noticed the acolytes and the other clerics could also feel the comfort in the air.
Have you done it, Master?
Viren asked, staring at the air all around them. No, I didn't do this. This is... Wait here, Dane instructed, bolting through the chapel's front doors, sprinting for the cottage that used to serve as their base for the Aurora. As he neared, the feeling became stronger, making all the forest's colors seem brighter and more vibrant than he had ever seen. With only a few more strides, Dane slowed to a walk, peeking around the corner of the cottage to see Ariel facing away from the door. She wasn't here in her spectral form, nor was she using another pseudo-body. It was Ariel, the goddess herself. With respect and nervous steps, Dane walked closer, realizing just how much time had passed since he'd last visited her temple. Ariel turned to him with an almost blank expression, smiling dimly when she caught sight of him. From his observation, her posture no longer suggested her pregnant form, so he could only assume that she held their child within her arms. Dane stopped, swallowing and sucking on his now dry lips. Though again, Dane noticed her arms didn't appear to carry anything. Ariel, I thought you couldn't come to Eusoria, he stammered, swallowing again. Ariel's voice wasn't angry, but it didn't have the same warmth he'd known it to have. I can come for short periods, but I must leave much of myself within my home. Then, are you here to scold me for my scarce visits? Oh, don't worry. Here's an example right here. As my voice starts to get a little warmer, my voice usually gets higher. And I like to try and drag it out to use it as much as possible. So, for now it's actually getting warmer and now it's getting higher. So, I'm losing the good voice. Plus, I haven't actually done a full warm-up, so... Like I said, this is a random stream, so I'm just kind of having fun. But thank you for your, thank you for your concern. Let's see. Then are you here to scold me for my scarce visits? I have been lonely these past 3 years, but that is not why I'm here. I thought you should meet your daughter before too much time goes by. The skin... Yes, again, thank you for your concern. I do take it under advisement. The skin in his hands felt sticky, and a lump formed in his throat. Daughter? Yes, our daughter. Our warrior of light. Ariel smiled, reaching behind her for something. Dane saw a tiny hand gripping the cloth near the edge of her skirt. Come, Reen. Say hello to your father, Ariel coaxed, leading a small, blue-eyed girl with long, champagne blonde hair from behind her. The girl reluctantly moved around her legs, clinging to Ariel's skirt and hiding her face against her leg. Her light blue dress like a beacon for Dane to see. How is this possible? She's already so big, yet only 3 years have passed. How old is she? In Eusorian time, she is 6 years of age. Time within the temple used to flow erratically compared to Eusorian time, accelerating or slowing without reason. Since Reen's conception, time within the temple has stabilized to twice that of Eusoria. Then, doesn't that mean she will age more quickly? She could surpass us both in age and die before I complete my research. Her soul is partially mortal, meaning part of her life is tied to Eusorian time, leading to her rapid childhood while in the temple. but her soul is also partly deific. Once she has matured, she will age almost imperceptibly. As such, Rain isn't fully either. She is something in between. We are in uncharted territory now. Dane closed the distance between them with slow but happy steps, crouching to see his daughter's soft-featured face better. As he came within arm's reach, Reen peeked a look at him, backing away behind Ariel's skirt once more with wide eyes. "Mommy?" she whimpered, clutching at Ariel's skirt more until she knelt and put an arm around her, bringing her to the front once more. "It's all right. Dane is your father. He won't hurt you." Dane reached out his hand, scooting closer to allow her tiny hands to reach him. Before she touched him, Reen backed away into Ariel's arms, whimpering again until Ariel hushed her gently and reached out her hand instead, placing it in Dane's palm. "See? There's no need to worry." Timidly, Reen unfurled from Ariel's embrace, reaching out and putting a hand in Dane next to Ariel's. With another reach, Reen put... Oh, wow. I messed it up. Okay, so this is good here. I kind of needed to do that. All right. So, timidly, Reen unfurled from Ariel's presence, reaching out and putting a hand in Dane next to Ariel's. Dane felt the world change. He could feel his eyes begin stinging as a lump formed in his chest, and the weight of his responsibility hit, not to the world, but to his daughter. This child wasn't just a weapon. No, not a weapon, not in the slightest. Her large doe eyes further distorted his vision, wiping his eyes. Reen was his daughter, a part of his flesh, a part of his very soul, and it was his duty to care for and guide her as she grew, not simply to use her. Slowly he closed his thumb around her soft, tiny hand and gently shook it in greeting. "Hi there, Reen. I'm your father." All right. So, for those of you in the chat, I can assume it's Tasenda and Random Panda. What do you think so far? I know I made a couple mistakes here that I kind of needed to edit in the process, but beyond that, what do you think? Oh, wow. All the way through Guardians, I take it. Well, thank you very much. And as the videos come out, I hope I can continue to entertain. All right. Moving on. The strings of black energy snapped shut around the unsuspecting couple, dragging them through a growing pit of dark, swirling goop. Within moments, they dropped into a stone brick cell, surrounded by fierce, giant knights. "What is this? What do you want?" the man screamed, trying to break the bands holding him on the floor. "If it's money you want, my father can get you all the money you want," the woman screamed. Will chuckled under his breath, pushing up his hexagonal-rimmed glasses and walking into the swirling dim light of the bands. What we want is far more precious than gold or silver. Your contribution to Kritas is much appreciated, he said, the light hiding his eyes with a glare. A woman with blood-red hair stepped out from behind him, her eyes glowing with a sickening green light, putting her hand out. A tight feeling began to rise in their chests of the couple when a violet circle shone around them, revealing a white-haired man standing motionless with a dark metal staff in his hand. Clouds pulled from them, distilling into a pale pink liquid inside a small bottle. Within moments, the couple fell still as the thrall knights gathered them up and tossed the corpses into the gorge. "Oh my, Will, you are taking to the title of King of Spiders quite seriously. Even I wouldn't have been so heartless," Hilda commented, handing the bottle to Arcarium as he readied an alchemic matrix.
"He provides us with the life forces we need to finish the last of our research, Hilda,"
Arcarium replied dryly. Will grinned, writing a note in his journal before adjusting his glasses again. "Indeed, any butterflies that come into my web should be grateful for the opportunity. Besides, where else would we get the life forces for our work?" Hilda draped an arm over his shoulders and kissed his cheek. "You're such a terrifying noble," she teased, walking to Arcarium and watching as the reaction worked. The master alchemist began to grunt and strain, holding his hands against the pressure building between his palms. Tense minutes passed as the reaction intensified, lighting the room with a pale lavender glow, and tremors filtered through the ground. With a howling whisper, all sounds ceased, and the pressure disappeared. The candle's light dimmed as a chill filled the room, making a thin frost build on the stones and table. All that remained was a single glowing crystal in the center of the matrix, pulsing with a faint chime like a tiny bell. Hissing whispers howled around them when all the shadows swirled and pulled into the crystal. A pulse like a loud drum pounded from it, shoving everyone back hard, ripping through the halls and above the ground, ringing the hollow bell within the clock tower at the center of the city. Arcarium lowered his arm, staring at the pale rose-colored crystal hovering above the matrix, pulsing with an almost otherworldly power. Reverently, he reached out to it as the crystal seemed to be drawn to his palm, no bigger than a thimble, but brimming with energy.
"I've done it,"
he whispered, his voice shaking with excitement as he carefully stood, turning to show Hilda as she lowered her arms in reflex. "Is that—"
"It's an imperfect crystal, but yes. This is what you sought after. Life eternal with your youth and beauty intact."
Hilda reached out for it, her hands shaking as she picked it up. "It may be imperfect, but its power is perfect enough."
"There is but one step I require to complete this crystal, and only one person can give me what I need."
Hilda raised an eyebrow and glowered at the old alchemist, greedily clutching the crystal. "And who would that be?"
The white
mage," Will interrupted, closing his book of notes with a satisfying slap. Hilda gripped the crystal tighter, letting out an annoyed sigh while walking to the other side of the room. "That white-haired buffoon is too set on ridding the world of what he calls the darkness. And it's what we need to create this crystal. What do you need him for?" Arcarium placed a hand on his chin, stroking his beard. Before I go too much further, I see we have a third viewer in the chat. Welcome, welcome. I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you see here today.
Dark alchemy allows me to bend and twist life force into whatever I want. But with my current method and matrix, the power of the crystal is poisonous and will corrupt your youth over time. My spies report that the white mage can reverse the darkness into something else. With that knowledge, I can create a perfect crystal of Everlife.
I doubt he'd want to even share his findings with us. Besides, once he finds out what we're doing to create these crystals, he and his self-righteous sect will come to stop us for good. Then what if I were to approach him as a fellow researcher, ask him what he knows, and bring it back to Master Arcarium? Will suggested, smirking at Hilda over his shoulder. Hilda shivered. She swore every time she looked at him, she could see hazy spider legs hovering over his back out of the corner of her eye. Could you convince him that way? He is much more attuned to the darkness than you think, and he disappeared nearly 9 years ago. How would you even find him? Hilda, my dear. Hilda, my dear, your desire for youth and beauty drives you and prompted your failure to enlist his help. On the other hand, I have been searching for what the darkness is. All I do, even for you two, is for a better future. I doubt he'd turn that away. Will smirked, reaching for a bag and packing it with various books, scrolls, food, and paper. Arcarium stood over him, looking down over his nose with steely eyes.
His last known
I missed a letter here. His last known location was in the Forest of Peace, west of the Dragon Forest in Lifra. There aren't many places where he could disappear and go unnoticed, Will surmised.
We shall be waiting for your return, Will,
Arcarium thrummed, putting a heavy hand on his shoulder. It will be glorious, Will growled, leaving through the sewers of Kritas to find the white mage. Hilda stared at the crystal, holding it to the light, watching the swirling clouds within. With a crazed smile, she slammed the crystal against her chest, clouds of black swirling around her as she doubled over.
"You fool!"
Arcarium shouted, reaching out to cast a counterspell, but Hilda's glare stopped him. The crystal slowly fused with Hilda's body, flowing through her like a river of ice. I guess I can get rid of this. A cloud of sick yellow power appeared around her, moving around her body like a slow flame. After another few seconds, Hilda's grunts of pain mellowed into hard breathing.
"I told you the crystal is incomplete. Do you have any idea what could have happened to you?"
Arcarium scolded, holding his hand out to help her to her feet. Hilda's once golden-brown eyes glowed with the same sick yellow power that now permeated her very being. But it didn't. And now, I have what I want. All right. Getting ready for another scene change. So, how are we doing so far? How do you like it? And again, I want to give props to the Absolute VA. She's the one who helped me kind of edit and put this all together. So I will be putting this in both the written story and then I will be linking to her in the description of this live stream at the end. Well, this is a brand new chapter that has never been released. I decided to write it because there were a couple characters that I felt needed more a more detailed introduction into the story. So this one is brand new. I am kind of pulling it together just to for that introduction and reading it here for you guys to get a first time preview before it actually goes live for everybody to see. And there is a 0.5 chapter, which I actually might read after this if you guys are interested. Because it's going to be going live. That the 16.5 chapter is going to be happening after this one, because there's another couple characters that need introduction that will be not major but sizable players for the story later on. So I might do that instead of doing the chapter 18. Who knows? We'll see. I'll see if I have time for it or not. The current chapter 16 will become chapter 17. It just I'm moving chapters around is what I'm doing. Kind of putting this one in. It'll get kind of moved around a little bit. It won't be. It's not a replacement. It's an addition, if that makes sense. All right, cool.
So, let us continue. 3.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for listening, and I'm gonna give you a big cheer. Can we get 3 big cheers and a for Tasenda over here to hopefully pump her up for her essay over here for college, and I hope it goes well, and I hope you get a great score. You know what? Better yet, let's do this. Everyone in the chat right now who isn't Tasenda, do this. I'm typing it in right now. For Tasenda. Give him some give him some encouragement to make him be better. Or hopefully not be better, but hype him up. Ho 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 ho. Alrighty. Now, let's find out how Will is doing. 3 weeks passed as Will trekked across the Nile. Is it Nile? Nihal. Nihal. That's what it was. Okay. 3 weeks passed as Will trekked across the Nihal Desert, stopping in Arentia for a resupply of food and water, and leaving for Lifra soon after. Nightmares plagued him every night, and what sounded like hissing whispers constantly buzzed in his ears. As he traveled, clarity slowly came to him as he left the fog of Kritas's dark alchemy. His stomach churned, and his skin paled. The realization that so many lives ended by his hand in Kritas, and by extension, Hilda and Master Arcarium. His mission to find the White Mage remained, but now he vowed never to return to Kritas. He needed to atone for all the atrocities he committed. It took him only a short time to find the outer border of the forest, something making him hesitate to enter. But the whispers haunting him pushed him on. There may be a chance the white mage could help him atone and put him on a path of redemption. It felt like days passed in the forest while he searched, constantly aware of a dark presence somewhere out of sight. Sometimes he thought he could see a pair of eyes staring at him, only to disappear in the midnight like air. But with each hour, panic and dread grew, as did the desperation for forgiveness driving him on. The shadows closed around him, and the whispers became louder, making him sleep less and less. And then it happened. After waking from a particularly vivid nightmare, Will sensed something in the shadows around him. It was cold, like a breeze in a blizzard cutting straight to his soul. Large violet eyes appeared in a great shadow before him, its shape swirling like a cloud of soot in the form of a person. Reaching for his journal with shaky hands, Will turned to the center pages, reading over a spell he had learned earlier that year as a blast of fire shot from his palm. The inferno shot through the cloud, leaving no sign that it had done anything.
"What's the matter, little mage? Can't face your sins?"
The shadow growled, slowly approaching. Will could hardly breathe, gathering his things and beginning to run, driven by panic. He dared not look behind him, knowing that thing was closing in. Jumping to the side, Will used a tree as cover, trying to calm the thunder in his chest and the blizzard in his lungs. Peeking around the tree, he couldn't see the creature, but still, he dared not move. Letting out a breath, he turned back to see the beast salivating before him, holding its clawed hands wide. Will screamed as he turned to run, only to be met with its claws, tearing through the flesh of his back and the tree, throwing him to the ground.
"What's the matter, O king of spiders? Is your crown a farce?"
The shadow thrummed, picking him up by the scruff of his robes, holding him in the air to meet its gaze.
"How the mighty have fallen,"
it said, dragging a claw down his leg. Searing pain roared through him, feeling like winter spread under his skin. Looking down, Will saw that black ooze dripped from the wound. Instead of blood, and ash wafted into the air.
"I'm going to enjoy making you feel every last ounce of torment you inflicted. It will take weeks,"
the shadow growled, taking one of its claws and driving it through Will's calf. Again he cried out in pain as the shadow dropped him to the ground, raising its claws to strike his back again. So this is how it ends, Will thought, beginning to feel the ice spreading through his legs and back, sapping his strength as he tried to crawl away. Rolling onto his back, Will spread his arms out, waiting for the strike that would no doubt kill him. Instead, a beam of white light cut through the shadow, making it turn to face whatever was behind it, only to have several more beams of light punch through its form until it dissolved into nothing but ash. As his consciousness faded, he could hear muffled voices in the distance as someone appeared in his vision. The person seemed to be calling out to him, but he couldn't understand what they were saying. The tone of their voice seemed worried as they called to someone else. Within moments, he was lifted and carried by someone in armor, running through the forest. As his vision faded, he saw a large white building in the distance as whoever was holding him called out. Ooh, I need some water. Hopefully that sounded quite painful. because I really did want to try to make it painful. And if it did, cool. I'm doing my job. Let's make it a little bigger for you guys. Make it a little easier for you guys to see. All right. One more scene change, and then we're getting to the end of the chapter. Now, it's been a few years. To Reen, it was strange living here in Usoria. Time was always so much slower. Maybe slower wasn't the right word. Time felt measured and finite compared to her time within her mother's temple. There were some oddities, especially having 2 birthdays in the space of a year with her mother, and only 1 birthday while spending time with her father in Usoria. The passing years revealed dozens of questions Reen had about herself and the power she had within her. She could lift the mood of everyone around her just by being there. She could understand nearly every magical concept and spell known to the Aurora, especially those dealing with the ultimate light. Her father studied so profusely. The more she understood about her power, the less afraid she became of the world, seeming to push away all the darkness around her. Additionally, Reen could instinctively feel the pain and hurt within any person's heart and soul. She could feel their darkness. Whatever her power was, she could reach within a person and remove their darkness or conquer it, helping to reignite the light within them. Her current month-long visit was in preparation for her 18th birthday, an event usually met with a massive celebration with all a person's closest friends and family. Unfortunately, her father Dane seemed more interested in his research than her birthday, constantly locked away within his laboratory. It was the one place within the Aurora Temple she was utterly terrified of and not allowed to go, which left one burning question in her mind over the years. Why? Why was this one room off limits to her, and why did she fear it so much? But on this day, she would put aside those questions as she was busy helping an acolyte weave a complex spell to set off magical fireworks for her party. Sprigs of blue and red flowers, snippets of emerald green ferns, and drops of white liquid all mixed in a mash of sweet-smelling potion. As she wove the final spell over the mash, Eleanor burst through the front door carrying someone in her arms, shouting for Dane and Tasia to help the young man in her arms. Okay, I guess I can get rid of that last thing over there. Oh, actually, we have a 4th viewer in the chat. Welcome, welcome. I hope you are at least mildly entertained by what you see and or hear today. Reen was about to return to her magic fireworks when she felt a chill from the infirmary. Usually she could feel the darkness within anyone as a blot or a stain on a person's soul. But this feeling was far more intense, like a snowstorm against her skin. Whoever was in the infirmary needed her help to overpower the darkness within them. As Eleanor came out, Reen ran to her and caught her arm. "Who did you bring in?" "I don't know. An omen was attacking him, and it looks like it's got him good," she explained, holding out her gauntlet, dripping with a thick black ooze sizzling on the metal. "If Master Dane and Tasia don't do something soon, he won't make it." As Eleanor left to clean her armor, Reen stood in silence. She'd been on patrols with the clerics before and faced the omened creatures, but she and the clerics managed to conquer them before the omens harmed anyone. Was this the result of a successful attack? A moment later, Viren stormed out of the Viren stormed out of the hallway and called for any high clerics at the temple. Reen crept to the infirmary door, peeking inside to see her father and Tasia buzzing around a young man. Her father used a healing spell, while Tasia cleared and cut away swaths of black ooze. All around them, Reen could see the lights dimming and the cold feeling becoming even more powerful. "Can you make the healing spell stronger? Or can you make the healing spell stronger?" Tasia demanded. "I don't think I can. This young man is already weak, and I don't want to strain his life force." "If you don't make it stronger, I won't be able to get ahead of it," Tasia snapped, moving faster within a wound on the young man's back, splashing disinfecting salve into the injury. After a few minutes, Tasia grabbed a medical alchemy matrix, closed the skin, wrapped a potion-soaked bandage around the young man, and sighed heavily. "I've done everything I can for him. My healing spells can't help him any further. We'll need a miracle if he's going to make it." Dane sighed, both of them standing defeated beside the bed. Reen timidly walked over to the bed and looked over the young man's face. He couldn't have been much older than her. His grayish-white hair appeared soft, like a cloud, lying around his face, making it stand out against the blue officer's suit he wore. Reen slowly approached his bedside, enamored by him. "I can help him," she murmured, coming closer with more reassured steps. "What?" Dane asked, confused. "I can help him. I can get rid of the darkness affecting him." "Reen, I haven't taught you to combat this darkness. It isn't just his soul that needs healing. The ultimate light must meet darkness in all its forms to defeat it. Didn't you tell me that, Father?" "Yes, but this is more advanced than you are ready for." "Father, I know I can do it. Just trust me. I was born for this, remember?" Dane wanted to stop her, to send Reen away and keep her safe from this potent form of darkness infecting the young man. But Reen was also stubborn when helping people with their darkness. With a sigh, he stepped aside, readying a shielding spell in case the darkness tried to corrupt her, when Tasia whispered to him, "Are you crazy? She doesn't even know basic first aid, let alone a complex medical—" "Reen is the child of the ultimate light. She was born with the power to fight against the darkness. Let her try." "Oh boy, I need some water!" Okay, here we go. Reluctantly, she stepped back to watch. Reen moved closer, looking over the bandages slowly turning black and listening to his labored breathing. Closing her eyes, Reen sifted through the myriad of emotions surrounding him. That was the darkness of the omen that attacked him. She could quickly eliminate that, but it wasn't the only darkness she wanted to cure. "Well, Reen? If it were the omen's darkness alone, it would be easy. It's his darkness synergizing with it and making the wounds worse," she said, pushing past the omen's darkness until she found the source of the young man's darkness. She could almost physically feel it washing against her like an ocean wave. Slowly reaching out, she held her hand over him. Black ooze seeped from the bandages, reaching up to her fingers. Dane was about to cast his readied shield around her, but saw the ooze burn away when it touched Reen's finger. A golden glow began falling from her palm like snow, burning away the ooze with each tiny orb. The glow enveloped her arm as more tiny orbs of light spread over the boy, burning away the ooze faster and faster when a bright golden light filled the room as if a bomb had detonated. Every trace of the ooze disappeared in an ash cloud, making the entire room feel lighter. As the light settled, Dane reached out to catch Reen as she collapsed, holding her steady for a while as she regained her footing. "Oh boy, you were right. I wasn't ready for that," Reen snickered, holding her head as her lightheadedness passed. "It's as I thought. You aren't ready to channel that much power. Give it time. You'll get there," Dane urged, as Tasia unwrapped the bandages, seeing no trace of the black ooze or the flesh underneath rotting away. Reaching for another matrix, Tasia closed over the last of the wounds, while Dane initiated a healing spell to replace what had corrupted away. What was that power anyway? Dane thought in awe, noting that the surrounding area still felt light, and the darkness hadn't pulled back like in his experiments. "She's much more powerful than I thought possible. If she finds her own ultimate light, combined with my research, she could eradicate the darkness easily," Dane thought. Viren and 2 more high clerics burst through the door, ready to offer their light to save the boy's life, only to find the emergency had passed.
"Master, were you able to heal him?"
Viren asked, watching as Dane helped Tasia with the last of the wounds. "No, it was Reen, my daughter."
"Your daughter? How much have you taught her?"
"For the power she used, I haven't completed enough of my research or taught her enough. It is far beyond anything I have learned," Dane answered, rolling the boy over and adjusting him to be more comfortable. Reen once again came closer, studying the face of the young man, making Dane tense. Yes, he wanted her to find her ultimate light, but he wanted it to be with someone within the Order, and not a random stranger. "What's his name?" Reen asked, with an almost swooning whisper. "We don't know yet. Eleanor brought him in unconscious," Dane answered, watching for any sign of hostile intent. When the young man...
I know how to words.
When the young man opened his amethyst eyes, he blinked a few times before focusing on the room around him. "Where am I?" he gasped, beginning to panic when Reen grabbed his shoulders and gently stopped him. "Easy. You're safe here. You're in the medical ward of the Aurora Temple."
"The Aurora Temple? Is this where I can find the White Mage?"
he asked, allowing himself to be laid back down. "Yes, it is," Dane answered, drawing his attention. "What is your name? Coming to find us here in the Forest of Peace must mean your situation is desperate." "I am Will Saren. Master Arcarium of Kretos originally sent me to find you, but I can't go back. I won't go back. I won't be his puppet any longer." Reen gently touched his shoulder, instantly calming his racing mind. "Slow down, young man. I am Dane Altur, and this is my daughter Reen. Tell me, what happened and why you sought me out?" With a heavy sigh, Will recounted the last few years of his life. "I began studying the origins of dark alchemy in Kretos almost a decade ago, learning about its power source and its effect on the world. I confronted the master of dark alchemy, Arcarium, and he brought me into his fold, asking me to help guide the usage of dark alchemy into a better future. Without my noticing, he manipulated me into enticing criminals to be captured and used their life forces to create a crystal for a less dangerous dark alchemy. Over time, the captures led to unsuspecting people when the criminals became wise to our traps. Just a few weeks ago, Master Arcarium completed an imperfect crystal of Everlife for Hilda and her quest for eternal life. Arcarium sent me to seek you out and help achieve the crystal's perfect state. But when I left, my head cleared, and I realized what I had done. I know I can never undo my past, but I ask that I be allowed to stay here and help you find a way to rid the world of darkness as penance." Silence filled the room as Dane's eyes darkened, walking to the far side, facing away from them. "Are you sincere in your desire for penance?" Dane sneered. "Yes, with all my being. If ending my life would make it right, I would do it. But I don't think it would," Will answered. Another long silence followed, making everyone nervous. "I can't say you are entirely at fault for your actions. The darkness is powerfully manipulative if you allow it." Dane again faced Will, a shadow over his eyes, dimming the room. "But you are at fault for your choices leading you into its control. I cannot judge you, blame you, or forgive you. You must find that on your own until you feel it is enough. Let those scars be a reminder to keep you on your chosen path while you stay here at the Aurora. Reen, I leave his settlement in your care," Dane said, leaving the room in silence. Viren followed him, quietly speaking with him as they ventured to Dane's lab.
"Master, are you sure this is wise? It could be a trap."
"I am aware of that, Viren. We shall closely watch him until we know he... Oh, okay. I am aware of that, Viren. We shall closely watch him until we know he intends what he says. But there is something else that bothers me."
"Are Keriam and Hilda?"
"Yes. Send a cleric to Kritas. Disguise them well enough to blend in and find out what is happening there. If they've succeeded, there's no telling how far they will pursue this eternal life, no matter how incomplete."
Shouldn't we find a way to stop them, Master? Innocent people are being murdered for a quest of vanity."
"We will. Eradicating the darkness is the best way. I am getting closer, Viren," Dane assured, smiling at him before entering his lab and locking the door behind him. Dane could hear agitated whispers all around him, drawing his attention to a bottle containing a fist-sized lump on his desk. A tepid smirk played across his face as he watched the mass within, picking up the bottle to see it better. It looked almost like a badly decomposed liver or heart. "Soon, Usuria, you shall be reborn." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the new Chapter 16. Thoughts? And I see I think we have 4 viewers in the chat. Welcome, welcome. I know you didn't catch the whole thing, but what are your thoughts so far? I'm going to be uploading this right now, so that's why I have the returning screen on, so that way I can do this stuff and not bore you with the details. Ah, yes, that is actually going to be a plot point in what will be Chapter 17. That is happening. That is still happening. It is the current, that plot line is actually the current Chapter 16. So, that is still there. This one is, again, trying to give some connections that will be relevant later in the story, rather than just saying, they happened. All right. Well, that's cool. Any thoughts? I'm open to any thoughts that you guys have. So, and even if just in the transcendence. How so? Um. Okay. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think the way I wrote that is it happened over a couple chapters. Um, I think it was like chapter 6 and 7, if I remember correctly. I'll have to go back and look at it because it's been a while and there's a lot of story to try to remember all at one time. Um, but I think the way I ended up doing that is like maybe time had passed and do like time skips kind of deal. All right. All right. Um. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because Dane fell asleep and then he woke up like sleeping against her, right? Um. Thank you. Again, I'll have to give props to the absolute VA who helped me kind of make sure to try and keep this right. Um, but as far as that chapter goes, it wasn't. I don't think it was. At least I didn't intend for it. It may have came across that way, so I might have to go back and kind of mess with it a little bit. But it was more so meant as just wanting to be the that comforting person for someone who is in like really intense grief. I mean, yes, that might have been the start of it, but at the same time, it was more so meant as a comfort, trying to comfort someone. At least that's what I was intending. So if that doesn't come across, I'll see if I can maybe modify it a little better. All right. Ah, okay. Um, well, uh, if you'd like, be sure and check out. Let me double check something here. I'm doing a thing in the background, so if hopefully it's not too boring for you guys. Ba, 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 ba. I believe it is. Uh, Okay, maybe it's this one. Ah, okay. So, if to kind of touch on that point, to like stuff being more. Yeah, that's one of the things that I kind of found on it, and also it seems like the the timeline of the story is quite fractured, um, because you'll have some people or some characters will come in and they will say it was hundreds of years ago, but then they'll say some other characters was like thousands of years ago, and then they'll say some was decades. So it's not really clear as to what characters come in where on the timeline. So my hope for this story altogether is to put everything into one solid linear timeline. But to kind of touch on the thought that about his first wife being more fleshed out, be sure and check out, I believe, let me look what I got here. You can either check out like the last third of chapter 12 of the written story, or you can go to there is a video. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find the thing. There is also the video of it that gives more visuals, but the written story also has the same kind of deal going on. Let's see, I believe it's this one. Nope, not that one. Okay, so if you can either read the last third of chapter 12 on fanfiction.net, or you can go to the Maplestory the Novel playlist and watch the video for chapter 12 part 3. That should give some hints as to what's going on, and as far as what's going on with Ariel, because there is also a well, actually, I think I can. Oh, hold on. Give me a second here. There we go. I forgot to loop that. I think we can watch it together. So, here's something else to kind of pick up some possible explanations. And if you give me just a second here, let me finish up putting up the chapter, and then we can watch a video together that may spark some questions and may answer some more. I don't know. Depends on how you see it. Let's see. All right. So now I need to see. Oh, no. No. I don't want to. Properties. Okay, so how can I... I could have sworn I was able to reorder these. Ah, okay, there it is. Okay, there we go. I'm pretty sure... Alright, cool. Now, I need to do this. So, how's everybody doing today? For me, it's morning. For you guys, it may be evening, maybe night. I know, Random Panda, you're probably getting ready to get out of here because it's getting close to probably midnight for you, right? Okay. Oops, no, this is that. Oh, okay, so it's not too bad. All right. So, then I've reordered the chapters. So, for now, what we're going to do is it's not part of the playlist proper, but I do believe I have it linked into one of the videos. It is a video I did. It is a video only. That is kind of like a side story. Let's see if I can find it. Ah, here we go. Okay, give me a second here. I'm just kind of moving things around a little bit. All right. So, now let's watch this video together.
Many salutations to viewers and coins of the vault alike. What you are about to hear or watch will not be featured in the written story, and will only be on my channel here on YouTube. If you are watching this, then you are part of the few that will ever see it. Tread with care as we step into oblivion. Nanahuatzin stormed through the halls of Minerna's home, threads of lightning snapping from the tips of his pauldrons. Servants had to avert their eyes from the bright light humming from his armor, reflecting off the mirror-like crystals that made up the walls. He threw the doors open to Minerna's throne room with a hard shove.
My candlelight! What a surprise!
What did you do, Mother?
Nanahuatzin demanded, pointing his shaking finger at her, walking with heavy steps to her throne. Minerna tilted her head.
I'm afraid you have me at a loss.
She answered, appearing to feign ignorance as Nanahuatzin stormed up the stairs, hurling the guards away.
Do not patronize me. You know exactly what I mean. The journal, Minadora, Ariel, Dane, all of it.
I have searched the Hall of Memory, and I have read the scrolls of past that I do not remember. So I will ask again. What did you do?
Minerna sighed, looking down to the floor.
I'm surprised it took you so long to see it.
She replied, walking to one side of the room with Nanahuatzin close behind.
How long has this been happening?
he asked, wide-eyed.
Longer than I can remember.
Minerna groaned, leaning against the railing of her home and looking over the universe below her.
Ariel isn't even the true goddess of time. Or my sister. Is she?
No, she isn't.
Did a god or goddess of time exist before her?
The previous goddess still exists. I am the true goddess of time, and for now, Ariel will hold that title.
You're not even my mother, are you? We aren't even related.
No, Nana Huatzin, we are not. You are the god of light for this universe and have always been so. But what is happening in Usoria is something far stronger than either you or I.
Nana Huatzin collapsed against the railing, looking over the thousands of galaxies and stars all around them.
Does Nexus know?
He asked quietly.
Yes, he does. It was he that told me what needed to happen for this universe to live. But I stubbornly tried to mold time in a way that prevented the world's destruction. No matter my actions, it led to the same result, happening only sooner or later.
And how many times has this loop happened?
I stopped counting after the first 10,000. As of now, the universe is still dangerously close to the ultimate end. However, the path to continuance is much brighter than before.
Then why haven't you told Ariel about this? Why have you kept so many secrets from her?
If she were to know, then the path to continuance would be closed to us, and this would start again.
Minerna sighed. The two of them sat in silence for a while, watching the constellations inch by.
Does Haim know?
He does, or at least he used to. Haim recognized the pattern after the first dozen loops, seeing the wear in the human souls that should only exist for those advanced in age.
Does that mean you're running humanity ragged? If their souls are wearing down, then it will only be a matter of time before there's nothing left to them.
Haim has repaired the damage in their souls by using small bits of his own. I doubt he even remembers why he has been doing it, and only goes through the motions. It has taken much from him. He hardly remembers who he used to be now.
If he is supplementing the damage, then shouldn't he be able to heal the wounds created by the darkness?
The damage inflicted by the loop and the wounds that lead to darkness are two very different things.
Nana Huatzin lowered his brow, looking up at Minerna from under it.
But
these loops are steadily adding to the darkness's power. Each time the loop is reset, the darkness compounds instead of resetting.
Nana Huatzin straightened, his fist tightening and threads of lightning buzzing across his armor spines.
then why start the loop in the first place? Did you know this would happen?
Yes, I did. And I could have ensured continuance much sooner had my hubris not gotten in the way.
Nana Huatzin turned and left, his cape thundering behind him, but Minerna caught his arm.
Where are you going?
Ariel deserves to know who she truly is and what you've done to her.
I forbid you from speaking of this to her.
Why? By your very admission, their souls are wearing thinner with each loop. How many more times must this happen before there's nothing left?
Please, I beg you, do not reveal what you have found. Continuance is on the horizon and much closer than it has been before. Please, Nana Huatzin.
The deity of light glared at Minerna, the straps of his armor creaking as he clenched his fist.
You already know what happens, don't you?
I wouldn't be much of a temporal goddess if I didn't.
Minerna sighed as Nana Huatzin pulled his arm from her grip.
This will be the last time, Minerna. Continuance or not, we must move forward.
Minerna let out her breath and relaxed, folding her hands before her.
Thank you.
She whispered.
What was it that caught your attention?
She asked before Nana Huatzin stepped through the door of her room.
The journal. It's light, or as the White Mage calls it, atomic decay was magnitudes older than it should have been.
He called over his shoulder, walking through the doors as they shut behind him.
Okay, so hopefully that either raises some questions or raises some answers or something like that. I don't know which it would be, but hopefully that is sparked all your interest. I shall be right back because I need to take care of something on my end. But if you have like questions or comments or something like that, be sure and go ahead and get to them, and I will read them as soon as I get back. All right, so I have returned. Okay, so yes, this particular video was more so a. Yes, it is actually. This is like I said, like it said in the video. This is a YouTube only video, or chapter part. It's kind of a supplementary part more than anything. Just kind of some background information. So the guy in gold, yes, Nanahuatzin is the transcendent of light, at least for this. Heim is the transcendent of life for this. If you are to read, I believe it is what is now will be chapters 23 through 25 of Sacred Tears, it will make a little more sense as to why there's Nanahuatzin, the transcendent of light, and well, not actually there. for this particular story, in Sacred Tears, they are gods. They aren't actually transcendents. In chapters 24 and 25, I believe I've explained it to how the transcendence came around for like further in the story. But yeah, he figured out how to duplicate the crystals, is what he did. And then he went to another smithy to have more stabs made so he could put the crystals in those stabs, to help expand his ranks. So yeah, there's that. Alicia, she does make an appearance in the story. However, she does not officially appear until what will be, let's see, 2, 3, what will not be until like book 4. So yeah, she does appear, just not for Sacred Tears. There is a reason why it's a little weird. But it should, chapters 23 through 25 of Sacred Tears should explain why it seems a little off. Okay. The other thing as to what Ariel is, that is something that that is a big reveal that's going to happen like much later in the story. There are hints throughout the story of who Ariel really is. And I believe there is, like I said, in the last third of chapter 12 of the written story, or in the videos of chapter 12 part 3, there is a kind of a revelation / hint that is brought up. So yeah, it could answer some of the questions there. The editing, yes, I was actually really proud of it. There's still some stuff I'm not completely proud of because this was before I learned some things on the video editing software that I use. So there's still kind of like some of the walk cycles that I didn't know really how to do while moving them off screen. So it didn't come out as well as I wanted to. But yeah, it is on YouTube. I will provide you the link right now. So there's that. All right. So that's all that stuff. So I can do a couple different things from here. Okay. Or like an epilogue scene? Is that kind of what you mean? Oh, okay. It's all good. Just making sure I understand. All right. So from here, I can do a couple different things. I can read what's going to be the chapter 16.5 and then put it up on fanfiction. I can do some editing for chapter 18, which will be kind of boring because it'll be going slower. So, and you're not going to get a lot of stuff there. It's just kind of more so come with me on the journey as I do the thing. Or, and here's another thing. I want you all, everyone, to have an opinion on this. We can watch together Maplestory, the novel, the videos from the very beginning. Now, some of them I haven't fully animated yet because I haven't gotten around to it. But we can start those from the beginning, or we can continue on with the... actually, no, give me a second here. I'm going to put up a poll. Or, and here's one more. All right, so there's the questions. Whoops, not 19. Well, 19. It says 19, but it really means 18 because I fat fingered a key there. But yeah, tell me what should happen. Okay. All right. All right, we got one for 16.5 of Sacred Tears and one for the video. Oh, we got two for the videos. Okay. Perhaps I'll do. Maybe that's what I'll do for next Wednesday then. The next coming Wednesday is I shall read. I'll do the editing and stuff off camera and stuff, but I shall do the reading of chapter 16.5 on the Wednesday stream. How's that? I'll try and get a better schedule going. So hopefully I can get you guys here because this is awesome having so many people talk to. All right. So there it is. We are going to watch the MSN videos from the beginning. All right. So give me a second here. Let's get stuff together. All right. I need to do that. All right. Here we go. Ah, right. Gotta do with. Okay. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. All right. And also keep in mind that some of these still have the old intro music on it, so I might have to mute them. But here we go.
Maplestory the Novel, Season 1, Sacred Tears. Written by Tatsumori Korisuno. Prologue. Looking back at her life, Ariel would often ask herself why she hadn't seen the darkness before she had met him, before he had grown up, before he had even been born. Why hadn't she seen his darkness? Why hadn't Ariel foreseen where her choices would lead? She was a goddess of time no less, yet foresight for what this man would persuade her to do would never come.
Forgive me, my daughter, Reen.
She breathed helplessly, as Reen and the man she both feared and loved were frozen within a seal. She could undo the temporal seal placed around them, but then what? Maga Slow's breaking of Reen's sleeping spell halted only because of the seal. If it were gone, he would break through the complex sleeping spell in a matter of moments and then fend off Ariel to escape. If that happened, the erasure of Eusoria would likely be close behind. The only other way she could ensure Eusoria's safety was to kill her own daughter. But how could she? Reen was her daughter, an innocent child caught in the tides of a fallen man's thirst for power and a desperate woman's search for peace. Yes, she was a goddess with limitless might at her disposal, but even that power had a weakness. And Maga Slow was the one who wielded that power, the darkest power that existed within Eusoria. Black magic.
All right. Give me a second here.
Maplestory the Novel, Season 1, Sacred Tears. Written by Tatsumori Korisuno.
Episode 1, Part 1, Tinge. She had tried everything that she could think of, battling against the thousands of his soldiers, and still he came as though he were brushing aside a lock of his hair. The last-ditch effort was to run to the innermost chambers where Rin was for safekeeping and escape from their home, the Temple of Time. Running past the final line of defense, she called the Oblivion Knights to attention, telling Lekira that they must hold the line. The Red Bull nodded, turning his attention to the sound of marching down the hall. Fire blazed around his hooves and horns, billowing from his snout. Ariel could hear the sound of her final and most potent general let out a desperate billow, the thunder of his hooves fading down the hall and crashing into the oncoming soldiers. She hoped to hold slow long enough to gather Rin and escape. When Ariel burst through the doors, she realized she was too late. Slow was already standing next to her bed, gently brushing his finger across her cheek as she slept. "I'm surprised she's managed to sleep through the sound of battle," Slow smirked.
Get away from her!
Ariel screamed, holding her hand out as a flame roared to life. Slow appeared before her, grabbing her wrist with slow speed and locking eyes with her, malicious whispers hanging in the air around them. Shrieking cries of a woman in labor split the evening air in Margata. Minutes dragged as hours. The light of Carl's home dimmed and flashed with the child's arrival into the world, making him momentarily ponder it. As the child began to emerge, the mother's cries came all the higher as the child pulled his way out of his mother. With another great heave from Adelia, the child was free at last, letting out a great cry, screaming his distaste of the world's cold air. His screams were soon rested, wrapped in a warm blanket, and brought to his exhausted mother and proud father.
Have you a name for the child?
Carl asked, with eager curiosity. Adelia, not yet having caught her breath, looked to her husband for a moment, leaning down to Adelia's face to hear her exhausted whispers. Maxis, the father, repeated the name she had picked out even before she had married.
Dane. His name shall be Dane,
answered Maxis, cradling Dane in one arm while holding the hand of Adelia as she fell asleep. Carl nodded and moved aside, allowing nurses to come in and tend to the mother and child, ensuring no complications would come to either of them. After a few days, the new small family began a journey to the holy city of Orion, a custom in Usoria. There, the child would be blessed by a priest in the order of Minerna, an honor that most considered to come at a high price. Those that didn't have the money would call for a traveling bishop to bless their child in the name of one of 3 deities who ruled time, light, or life. Unfortunately, many children lived out their lives without a blessing, as bishops were so few. Those that did exist were tasked with hundreds of thousands of families seeking such a blessing or spiritual aid. Adelia and Maxis were fortunate enough to be among the few that could afford a blessing of Minerna.
I wonder what kind of man he will grow up to be,
Adelia said as they boarded the land ship, which would take them from Margata to Arentia, a more substantial city in the middle of a sandy sea.
Only time will tell, my love. Fate is a funny thing here in Usoria. Many have the power to change it, while others are guided by it to a destiny we will never understand.
He smiled, presenting his ticket to the usher and filing his way to their seats when the driver's voice filled the cabin.
Thank you all for coming. This journey should take approximately 9 hours, assuming that we don't have any problems. I know there are children aboard, so we will have some entertainment for them. Also, we have food and drink. Please remember to stay in your seats, and thank you again for choosing us to be your charter,
the pilot announced, returning to the cabin to begin their journey. As Adelia was getting settled, she couldn't help but look up and see an odd man staring at her and Dane. He was pale, with a dark cloak covering his head and body. Turning away from the man, she could feel a slight pressure on the front of her head, but dismissed it as a headache from lack of water. But the man still stared, his glare drawing Adelia's sight back to him. His eyes seemed to burrow into her very soul, forcing her to remember long-forgotten pain and sadness. The longer she watched, the more intense his red-eyed gaze seemed to become. Still, the memories plagued her first pet dying and wondering why it had to be her pet, her first breakup, the death of her grandfather and grandmother, being rejected by prestigious schools. All of it came trickling back to her. Shaking her head, she focused her tear-stained attention to the sleeping babe in her arms. Instead, the face of a pale man wrapped in a black cloak stared back at her. Panicked, she looked back to the man who held his uncomfortable gaze as she felt a presence come near to her ear. It was torrid and full of hate, stifling even. The presence drew even closer to her ear and whispered with hot breath.
This is but the beginning.
A noise jolted Adelia awake, the sight of her face hot from leaning against the window.
My dear, is everything all right? You're pale,
Maxis asked, placing the back of his hand on her forehead. Adelia looked over to him, noting that he was holding Dane in his arms, fast asleep.
How long have I been asleep?
She asked, brushing the long hair out of her face while passing a glance to the seat across the aisle, where a young boy sat.
For most of the trip, we're only a few miles outside of Arentia. Are you sure you're all right?
Maxis asked, looking in the direction she had been staring.
I haven't...
But the words she wanted to say just weren't coming to her, and the man that she thought she saw was nowhere to be seen.
You were tossing and turning in your sleep. Did you have a nightmare?
Maxis asked, resituating Dane in one arm and putting the other around Adelia.
I wouldn't really call it a nightmare, so much as it was a very intense dream or vision,
she whispered. Maxis smiled and rubbed her arm from around her back.
Don't worry. Nothing can hurt you here so long as I am here,
he said, kissing the side of her head. All the same, Adelia couldn't help but wonder if what she had seen was a dream or a vision. She felt a genuine presence standing next to her in the dream that was familiar somehow. Perhaps her family lineage coming from prominent shaman of Aswan was playing a small part. Within minutes, her mind calmed, forgetting about the dream as they pulled into the bustling city of Arentia. Adelia couldn't help but notice the periodic beggars and homeless that skirted the marketplace and station as they made their way to the main ticket booth. Maxis's work as a scientist in Margata often left them with a surplus of money. Most, if not all, would be donated to traveling bishops visiting Margata to help the people such as these. As he rifled through his pockets for his coin purse, Maxis caught her stare and sighed.
We've done what we can, my love. The bishops know how to best handle the distributions,
he said, trying to quicken his actions to find the coin purse, holding their tickets for the next galleon.
But is it doing any good? Are we the only ones helping?
She asked, noting that the air of this station felt unusually heavy. A strange thing to notice, to be sure, but all the same was odd.
We can't make people help. We can only help with what we can and hope they will follow suit. Where is that blasted purse?
He said with emphasis. Adelia chuckled and reached into his pocket, pulling it out and finding the tickets.
I have it,
she said as they quickly made their way to the galleon. Once there, they settled into their first-class seats, making sure that Dane was fed and settled as the ship gently pulled out of the dock for Orion. Adelia had no more visions, and her feelings from the previous ride already died away, leaving her hopeful and at peace. As the galleon glided into the dock, 2 attendants came aboard and sought out the couple, presenting a decorative pendant sporting a large blue gem. "We was sent by Bresden of Minerna's order to escort you to the Great Hall," they explained. Maxis and Adelia both nodded in agreement, following them over the cobblestone roads to a building decorated with grand wings on the roof. Inside, intricate gold designs woven into walls and fabrics depicted events and people from all times. At the rear of the building loomed a giant marble statue of a woman, its arms outstretched to the floor, and her wise eyes smiled down on any below. Once near the main sanctuary, the attendants directed them where to meet the Fatri and bid them farewell. As they neared, they could overhear the sounds of grumbling coming from one of the side rooms.
I am a Fatri of Minerna, not some lowly bishop to be summoned for a child's blessing. You would think the order would acknowledge that.
Maxis and Adelia looked to one another as they waited. The Fatri pushed aside the curtain and exited the room, still adjusting the sash around his shoulder. When he caught sight of them, he squared his shoulders and folded his hands.
Welcome to the Temple of Minerna. I trust the child is healthy?
The priest sighed while stepping closer to them.
Yes, Vatri. A healthy boy by the name of Dane.
Adelia answered. Holding out his hand and turning his head away, the Fatri waited for one of them to take it and kiss his ring. The two of them looked to one another in confusion, unsure of what needed to be done. When a long while went by without any action being taken, he opened one of his eyes and looked down, wiggling his hand twice and waiting for them to kiss his ring.
I'm sorry to ask, but has something changed within the customs of Minerva's order that I am unaware of?
Maxis asked. The Fatri's shoulders slumped and turned his eyes up into his brow, dropping his hand to his side.
I am a Thottery of Minerva, and should be shown the respect as such, as I am the voice of the Great Mother herself,
he answered with a huff, holding his hand out once more, this time making it much clearer his ring should be kissed. Maxis bowed low and apologized, taking his hand and bowing enough that his forehead touched the ring. The Fatri rolled his eyes and pulled his hand away, holding his hands out to receive the child.
Dust-bitten rats should be taught better,
he thought, looking over Dane's facial features and serious blue-gray eyes as he was placed in his arms. As the Fatri looked him over, the air around the three of them almost seemed to dim as something felt like it washed over him. A presence of duality and despair filled with deep-rooted pain as thoughts of his late son came to mind.
What is it you would like the child blessed with?
He stammered, while memories of his son rushed to him. He had performed this very same blessing on his own newborn son nearly 10 years ago.
We only wish that he would grow to be a happy and prosperous man someday,
Maxis said, putting his arm around Adelia and pulling her close. The priest nodded, turning to the main altar, trying to compose himself for the actual blessing. His vision blurred as he recited the words under the intense gaze of the child, making his own heart ache. He and his wife had been trying for years, and when his son was finally born, they were overjoyed. But a week after the blessing, the small child became ill and passed away. The child in his hands seemed to be reaching into his soul and grasping on to that sadness. When at last the blessing was complete, the priest's voice hitched and wavered as he spoke to the parents.
May Minerva smile upon you and the days of your child. There is something strong at work with this family. Go in peace.
The priest smiled, folding his hands and watching them as they left, cuddling their child and speaking to him. When at last they were out of sight, the priest collapsed to his knees and broke down bawling. After he had buried his child, the grief was too much for his wife to take, and she threw herself from the topmost tower of Minerva's temple. The priest said she had been begging Minerva for answers, but when it seemed no answer came, she jumped, the memory fading as he furiously worked in the service of the order, until now.
What fate would befall this child that he would have such power?
He asked to the winds, asking another priest to take over for him while he dealt with his pain.
Well, I know I've been quiet this whole time, mostly just so that way I didn't, ruin the audio over here. But so we're 2 videos down. Thoughts, anybody? Yeah, that's like, believe it or not, these videos actually started because I wanted to do I actually wanted to do a soundtrack to the written story. But then I realized that people may not exactly have the same reading speed that I do. Some people read faster, some people read slower. So it would kind of mess up the whole feel that would have happened. Like, what was supposed to happen is as you read the story, the soundtrack would play in the background, so it would kind of go along to
like as you were reading it. But then, I came up with the thought, maybe people to have different reading speeds, and, they wouldn't have the same tempo that I do. So the effect would be kind of lost. So then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to read it aloud. So that way, can have it, if they wanted to, they could read along the story and listen to the music in the background. But then as I kept going through it, I remembered, oh, right, there's female voices in here. I don't sound good as a female, so I got together, looked around for a few people to see if they were interested in it, and that's what ended up making it into this series. Up to, I think it's chapter 5.2 or 5 part 2, I just did it as just an audiobook on it, and it just had this static image in the background. Speaking of which, I need to move this over again. Just had this static picture in the background to listen to. But then I thought, you know what? I looked around a little bit and I found a way to make the Maplestory sprites. So then I was able to make the videos. And it's like, you know what? Just continue on this way and see what happens. When I get to once I finish with Sacred Tears, when I get to Guardians, I may do something slightly different. Rather than actually doing like a full audiobook, I might actually do like an audio drama kind of deal where I'm not reading in between, and I'll see if I can animate stuff better. We'll see what happens to it. So anyways, let's continue.
Previously on Maplestory the novel, Sacred Tears. His screams were soon rested, wrapped in a warm blanket, and brought to his exhausted mother and proud father.
I wonder what kind of man he will grow up to be.
I am a Thottery of Minerna, and should be shown the respect as such, as I am the voice of the Great Mother herself.
And now the continuation of Episode 1, Part 2. Adelia walked to the far side of her father's study, looking over the railing into Aswan below, a large city carved into the rock below the sand. Its entrance was marked only by a massive black obelisk and palace-like building among the endless waves of sand. Maxis and Dane sat near her father Vusron's desk, opposite the railing where scrolls and tomes lay scattered.
And you're sure that nothing like this has happened before?
Vusron asked, holding his chin as he searched through a scroll before tossing it aside and picking up a nearby tome.
Yes, I am quite sure,
Adelia responded, watching as one of the many shamans and their apprentices walked through the city below. Sighing heavily, Vusron closed the tome and set it aside on his desk.
I don't know what to tell you, Adelia. From what you've told me, you merely had a dream on your way to Orion. If anything, it could be you inherited the gift of sight from...
Vusron stopped himself and looked up to Adelia as she now stared longingly at a painting of her mother hanging on the wall. A proud but beautiful woman with cascades of light brown hair. Maxis looked up and noticed the hurt in Adelia's eyes and the distance in Vusron's.
I'm sorry, I didn't...
I know, Father,
Adelia replied, folding her arms and hugging herself.
Whatever happens, you and Maxis are always welcome here in Aswan,
Vusron said, walking over to Adelia and placing a hand on her shoulder while speaking low to her.
Always remember that you do not have to be bound by your heritage.
Vusron comforted, both of them hugging each other before the small family left through the main gate, escorted by 2 large guards until they were on their way in the sand sailor. As they were going, Maxis heard one of the guards scoff loudly. Finally! I was beginning to wonder when that traitor's daughter would leave. Maxis looked back to Adelia, wondering if she had heard, only to see that she bowed her head, trying to keep a single tear from falling. Why would you let them talk to you like that?
Maxis pressed once they had been seated and were on their way.
It has to do with my mother, but it's not something I like to talk about,
Adelia replied sharply, pulling Dane into her lap.
I saw the look both you and your father had when you looked at that painting, and I know what it means. What happened?
Just leave it alone.
Adelia, the most that I know about your mother is that she died. What I saw in there means something more happened. Please, tell me. What happened to your mother? Maxis pressed.
Adelia curled her lips inward, trying to keep her tears from falling as she looked up to the ceiling, battling with herself on whether or not she should tell him. She reached through the collar of her shirt and pulled from it the necklace she always wore.
My mother was a powerful grand shamaness, nearly a master. One year, the master shaman found that a surge of mana would be welling up from Usoria. If something wasn't done, it would destabilize the power of the great obelisk. When the surge came, despite the preparations that were made, it was more powerful than predicted, and the obelisk was about to release all its power. If it did, everything within 50 miles would be destroyed. My mother decided to try and absorb some of the power to stabilize it, and in doing so, helped the other shaman to regain control. But so much power flooded into my mother that she lost herself, dying in my father's arms a short time later. Once the surge had passed, despite protests of the other shaman that had helped, the people of Oswan brought charges of treason against my mother and father. My father and I would have been banished from Oswan had he and my uncle not fought the accusations as hard as they could. Eventually, the king and the council were convinced that my mother only reacted to a dire situation, allowing us to remain in Aswan. Legally, we have been pardoned. But the people and shamans still shame her any chance they get.
Adelia looked down at Dane, noticing that his gaze was almost comforting, reaching out of his blanket for her. Maxis put his arms around her tightly, while kissing her head, saying nothing as they rode the coach back to Margata. Once home, Adelia settled into her life as a mother while Maxis returned to his work as one of the lead researchers within Margata, along their brightest mind, Dr. Matthias Long. Known as a significant alchemical hub within Usoria, Margata was home to some rather dangerous experiments between two cooperating factions. The Caldos were a group specializing in mechanical and biomechanical alchemy led by a man named Madei Sung. The Zoomist Society, as they called themselves, dedicated themselves to true alchemy, led by a wise man named Carl Jameson. This wing used nothing more than raw materials to create what they needed. Both factions had been researching the possibility of transferring a human mind into a mechanical body, spearheaded by Dr. Long.
Now tell me again, Doctor, why are we proceeding with this kind of unethical experiment?
Maxis asked, as Dr. Long looked over a report about their latest experiment of memory transfusion. I fear my wife and daughter will outlive me. As you know, my wife Felicia is of the last remaining Sylph fairies, and my daughter Kenny shares her bloodline very strongly. Because of that bloodline, I fear that I will be gone many years before they even begin to age. Dr. Long reached under his shirt and produced a locket, opening the cover and revealing a picture of two beautiful dark-haired women standing back to back. Kenny is healthy despite the odds of half-fairies often being weak. This experiment is really for me to create a body that lives as long as they do. Kenny is already into her mid-teens, and there is so much that I want to experience with them. I don't want to give that up just yet. Maxis smiled as he understood what Dr. Long meant. He wouldn't want to give up his family, not for all the miso in Usoria. Months turned into years. Experiments for various parts of the body were performed and then added. Maxis would sometimes bring Dane to the lab where he watched in awe as chemicals would mix, elements merged, or a piece of machinery would come to life. The alchemic masters within Margata instructed Dane thoroughly. His mind absorbed everything he touched or read, excelling in every subject. His ability to learn complicated matters quickly would isolate him from people, as he became despised and idolized for both his intelligence and his snow-white hair, a point of swarm attraction among young women especially. Retreating to his room once the day had ended, Dane would pore over tomes on any number of subjects, safe and alone. He also developed a habit of addressing his parents by their first name. At first, Adelia and Maxis thought it odd that he would treat them as such, but as time passed, It became apparent that it was not out of disrespect or a feeling of superiority, but rather a quirk of his personality. Once he had finished with the schools of Margata at the tender age of 13, he set his sights to the schools of Eusoria, focusing his study into the art of magic. Again, his learning and understanding of magic were unparalleled, so much so that he even outpaced his masters within a short time. It was through this study he felt the first tinge of darkness, or rather understood what he had felt all his life. Something was wrong with the world. It was faint, but it was there. The world was warped. After studying abroad for nearly 3 years, he spent days locked in his room, reading through history books and magic tomes to find the answer to his burning question.
I'm worried about him, Maxis.
Adelia said one day, watching as Dane pored over one of his books. Maxis looked past her to Dane, furrowing his brow.
I've tried getting him to come down to the labs and help with the experiments, but he always just comes right back here. I don't know what will get him out of the house,
Maxis replied, sighing long. Adelia was about to respond to him when a knock came at the door. Carl and Madej both had come with a small folder and hopeful expressions on their faces. Are you both free? There is something that we would like to discuss, Carl asked, motioning for the two of them to come outside. Maxis grabbed a cloak for both of them as they headed out into the cooling night.
Yes? What's the matter?
Adelia asked. Being master of liquid melding, she, along with Maxis, had been granted a seat on the Alchemic Council of Margata. Madej and I are pleased with the progress your son has made in his studies under us and within his own undertakings. With careful consideration, we would like to nominate him for the position of Master Alchemist. Madej snorted, turning to Carl with disdain in his eyes.
Carl here is the one that thinks the boy should be considered. While he does show much promise, I still think that it is too early for such a responsibility to be laid before him.
Maxis held up his hands between them.
Brothers, there is no need to bicker. I agree with Madej in that such a responsibility is normally a tremendous responsibility to set on anyone, let alone a young person. But Dane is no ordinary boy, as I'm sure that you have seen.
Then you agree that his nomination would be a great thing? Carl asked eagerly. Maxis looked to Adelia for an answer, feeling that she would be able to best answer the question.
Dane has been spending a lot of time poring over books. Much more than I think is healthy. Do not misunderstand me. I am proud of him for soaking up so much knowledge from our libraries and beyond. However, I believe that his obsession with researching whatever has his attention at this moment is bordering on the outrageous. Something like this, I believe, would break his endless cycle, allowing him to interact with others, furthering the advancements of alchemy here in Margata.
With her agreement for Dane's nomination, Carl and Madej left to prepare the paperwork and the eventual vote for all of Margata. I am not pressing the buttons fast enough. Well, so I know this, for those of you who are familiar with Maplestory's story, I know it differs, this particular one differs slightly, or differs probably greatly, actually, now that I think about it, from the initial backstory of the White Mage. And again, there is a reason for that. It doesn't really become apparent until like the end of the story. So as far as the videos go, I haven't gotten that far, but, I can words. There is a reason for it. However, I think that's where we're going to have to call it for today, for this random stream. This was fun. I'll probably have to do it again sometime. Maybe I'll turn this into like something like for the Wednesday afternoon streams, evening afternoon streams. Random, I know you might be, you'll probably be fast asleep when I do those. But for the rest of you guys, if you are interested in that, leave a comment down below for stuff to let me know. So, yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you were at least mildly entertained by what you saw, and I hope that you'll be back next week to do it again. If you want to be notified when I go live, be sure and become a coin in the vault by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. Be sure and have a look around the channel and check out Maplestory the novel Sacred Tears, Sly Cooper Rise of Vexen, or Arcane, all of which are fully voice acted with sound effects and music. Don't forget to comment and tell the voice actors just how good they did, because without them, it wouldn't be as awesome. I hope to see you guys next time, so until then, my friends.